What do you call the floor-level space that allows someone to traverse from one floor to another with stairs? In French it's called a trémie. This element is unlikely to be a hopper or funnel. What is it called in English? Would stairs aperture be good enough for people to understand?
There is a picture of a trémie at this URL. Essentially it is a hole. A trémie is a hatchway. OED. Hatchway N. Originally and chiefly nautical. A square or oblong opening in the deck of a ship providing access to the hold and through which cargo or other items may be lowered, equals hatch in .15c, a similar opening forming a passageway between decks. 3. An opening in the floor, ceiling, etc. of a building, which may be closed with a trapdoor or hatch. 2010 Portland, Maine, Press Herald, Nexus, the 20th of September A1. I had to stay near the hatchway to the attic. At one point, I clumsily knocked into the heavy hatchway door, and it bonked me solidly on the head. Hatch is to hatchway as door is to doorway.
Bonjour. Floor opening is the term to use. Much of what follows was written before I reached that conclusion, thanks to Lamby's comment below. I do technical and other translations French to English for a living, funnily enough. I have come across trémie and trémie d'escalier in the course of my activities. A great resource for such questions is Google Images. Search on Google but then click the Images tab. If you look at the images which come up for trémie d'escalier, it becomes apparent that it may mean different things for different French people. Look at this, for example, it is entitled Poser un trémie d'escalier, install a XXX. Looking at that picture, one expression comes immediately to my mind: I am English, flight of stairs. From the picture you have given I would instantly say something like loft hatch. But then you say, pass from one floor to another. If the upper floor in question is not a loft, but a normal floor, the question becomes more tricky. I'm not convinced that there is a simple term for that in English, although architects might just possibly have a specialist term they use. And the reason for that is apparent to me. I have so rarely seen a building, any building, either in the UK or for that matter in France, which uses an arrangement as in your picture, to pass from one floor to the next, that I immediately assumed that the upper floor was a loft. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, just that it's rare, and rather impractical, probably resulting in people banging their heads rather a lot. I don't think trémie d'escalier always means that specialist and unusual idea, of a floor opening between two normal floors, in French.
If you are looking for the opening in the floor between levels, it is indeed the aperture or opening PDF link. I was unsure of this. Empty space doesn't tend to have many specific names in architecture. In this case it is the stairwell aperture or stairwell opening. A hole that sinks below the ground or floor is called a well, Wiktionary, noun number 10. As a native U.S. English speaker, I would find it most natural to call it a stairwell opening. My French is not great, but it's good enough to recognize that you are using the trémie corresponding to this definition from the Larousse dictionary. Espace réserve d'un en plancher pour en circulation verticale, again, cage d'escalier, etc. That clarifies that it is indeed the opening in the floor that you are talking about, not the stairs, not the floor near the opening, not the framing of the opening, etc. That's consistent with your picture, description, and suggestion of stairs aperture, too, so you may be wondering why you've received such a diversity of answers. The thing is, this is a concept for which there is no term in common use in English, or American English, at least. In fact, in more than half a century of communicating in English, I have never discussed such an opening specifically or had it mentioned. Perhaps there is a technical term for it in the field of architecture or building, but if so, then the Larousse has not found it. Its French/English dictionary translates a trémie d'escalier as a stairwell, but a stairwell is not just the opening in the floor, but rather the whole volume in which a stairway is set. Perhaps bare a trémie would be understood differently, but the Larousse doesn't offer an applicable translation for that. If I had to convey this specific idea, then I would probably say something along the lines of the opening from the second floor onto the stairs. If I felt obligated to be more brief, then stairway opening it might do, but that would depend on context to communicate which of at least two openings I was talking about. And even then, unless the audience had in mind the particular unusual kind of stairway depicted in the question, I think there is a risk that they would get the idea of a vertical opening into the stairwell from the side rather than a horizontal opening in the floor. If I had some flexibility, then I would look for a way to avoid referencing the opening itself in the first place. It would generally be more natural to express an idea in terms of the stairway or the stairwell, if any, in which it is set than to talk specifically about the opening in the floor that serves the stairway. For example, I would not want someone to avoid falling through the opening, but rather to avoid falling down the stairs.